Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna devotees, Dandavat Pranam. Welcome to Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya. Today we will be actually playing the glorification of Srila Prabhupada by Holiness Jayapataka Swami Maharaj. This is actually a recorded video. I'll be playing that. I hope you were able to hear the Kirtan of Srila Prabhupada. I just wanted to check the volume. The
Yes,
devotee is able to...
Yeah,
okay,
very good.
Okay, thank you, Prabhupada. Thank you. Whether the audio is here, Prabhu, clear, Prabhu?
It's clear, Prabhu.
Yes, Prabhu.
Okay, ma. Thank you.
Prabhupada, his presence was so powerful that when you came in his presence, you didn't feel like you were part of the material world. You felt that you were in some kind of a spiritual, transcendental environment. I didn't know about Vrindavan then, but now we'd say that Prabhupada actually was bringing Vrindavan with him. And so you felt the mood of Vrindavan whenever he came in the presence of Prabhupada. He was actually carrying Krishna in his heart. So I didn't understand that, but I felt that. Just being with Srila Prabhupada, I could feel the change. I could see that here was a genuine spiritual master that was actually practicing what he was preaching or practicing what he was teaching. The other people that I visited, they had books and they had teachings, but then they didn't practice those things where Prabhupada was. So all these things helped to build up my faith, but then Prabhupada was very merciful and he immediately engaged me in service. He had me be an assistant to, at that time his secretary was Govinda Dasi, I think Gorsundar. I forget, I think it was Gorsundar, I'm not sure, I can't remember, I think. And so when they would go shopping, when Prabhupada took the afternoon nap, and they would have me like, they call it babysit or guru sit. I had to sit outside just in case Prabhupada woke up and wanted something, then I would be on call. And usually he didn't want anything. But I would be there while they were out just at that time. So sometimes Prabhupada would wake up and he'd call me in and then he would ask me different things. He said he wanted to get a flower. This was he said that if I get a flower every day, this will improve this will increase my longevity. So he asked me, can you bring me a flower? A rose, especially a rose, not just a flower, I wanted a rose. And then I was very excited, here the spiritual master was asking me to bring him a rose every day. So I said yes. So then I went back to the temple and then told the temple president I was going to get a rose for Srila Prabhupada. And the president said, what are you doing? You're in Maya. You can't do that. I said, why? Prabhupada told me to get him a rose. And I had phoned up, he heard me phone up a florist and order, I was going to go and pick up a rose. And he got really angry that, I shouldn't do that. But I thought he was like imposing himself, that I'll do everything else you say, but this one thing, Prabhupada asked me to bring him a rose. I want to bring him the rose. And he got very angry and said I couldn't do that, I should do something else. So I became a little angry because he was yelling at me, and it was... so anyway, I kind of just left the temple with the vibrations ringing in my ear, and I was walking off, and I got to like a dead end where the road, it didn't go any further, and nearby I saw there was a florist shop, and that whole time I would just, I wasn't able to think. So I walked in the florist shop, I thought, well, I'll get a rose, and the person said, oh, here, I've been waiting for you, here's the rose. Turned out it was the exact shop that I'd called, but I'd forgotten the address and everything. So then I went back and I saw Prabhupada and bowed down, I offered him the rose, and he took it. So thank you very much. I remember one time he was giving a lecture, and he was the whole lecture saying how we had to be 10% Krishna conscious. We had to be completely surrendered to Krishna, 100%. And he was just ramming that point home. And at the end of the class, the devotees were kind of, very serious and looking down, as if he could read their minds, that 100%, who could come up to that standard. So then he looked at them, and now he kind of relaxed his mood a little bit, and he said, well, if you can be 90% Krishna conscious, then you can also go back to Godhead. And then he started to slightly turn to prepare. There was a very big Vyasasana, and he was very high up. It was maybe 4 feet in the air. It was so he had to go down steps to get down the Vyasasana. So he was just starting to turn, and then he said, even 80%, even if you're 80% surrendered, Krishna will still take you. So then he turned, and he got down the Vyasasana, and he was walking away, and his chadar, his robe, the chadar was flowing with one hand, and then it was dragging on the ground, and he just kind of stopped at the devotees, looked at the devotees, and then he said, even if you're 70% Krishna conscious, still Krishna will take you in it. He threw the chadar over his shoulder and walked off with his head very high in the air. One devotee had told me that one thing you should do is you should always try to ask questions of Prabhupada, but you should think a little bit, and every time he gives a class, ask a good question. So, since I had that advice, I every time at the end of a class, I'd always ask a question, trying to think of something that was in the class. And then sometimes Prabhupada would... I remember one time I asked a question about Radharani something, and said, who are you to ask about Radharani? Or then sometime I would ask... every day I would ask questions. And so it would be a regular... I would ask questions, and then Prabhupada would respond, and he would respond every day in a different way. So then we had to work, we had to go outside and work to maintain the Montreal temple. There was no source of income. So I would miss the evening class, and I would be able to just come to the morning class. But the next day I'd listen to the tape. So one time I was listening to the tape, and at the end of class, Prabhupada said, anyone has any questions? And nobody had any questions. And he said, Jayapataka, or Jay, or whatever, I forget, anyway, whether I was initiated or not, I don't remember. So he asked nice questions. So that was like a big thing for me. Otherwise, Prabhupada didn't praise disciples normally to their face. He would always be very grave with the disciples. But sometimes you'd hear that he would comment to other devotees, and you'd hear it through the grapevine. So this time I heard it on the tape. Someone told me you should listen to the tape. I remember I was on a morning walk with Srila Prabhupada, and he just stopped by the side of a church. He looked at it, and he said that in the future our ISKCON temples are going to be something like the churches. that there'll be some devotees in the temple, but there'll be many devotees who live around the temple, and they'll be coming on the weekends or the festivals. And at that time, there's only maybe a dozen, or I don't know, maybe 1970. I don't know exactly how many temples there were, but there weren't that many temples, and the whole mood was making temples and joining the temple, being a temple devotee. But here Prabhupada was saying that in the future, the temples would be more like a center, and there'd be big communities around the temple of people worshiping Krishna in their home. So that I always remembered that, because of course now I have to do I'm doing a lot of coordination of congregational program. So that instruction really has a lot of importance to me now. But at that time, I didn't really know what to think of it. It was just like a prediction or something. I remember many things that happened when Prabhupada was in Montreal. Like we'd walk to McGill University or walk around the block, and Prabhupada would stop and make observations. One time he was saying that if you see a very healthy person, someone who's like very big, then you can ask him, where does he do his grocery shopping? Because obviously he must have a good source because he's healthy. And just so happened that a taxi drove up and let somebody out. The taxi driver came out and he was very big. Then Prabhupada said, yes, go ask him, where does he do his shopping? Prabhupada was just very spontaneous like that. And then so the devotee went over and asked him where he did his shopping, and the taxi driver, of course, kind of bewildered why someone was asking where he bought his groceries. So one day they said that in Montreal they found there was a cockroach in the quarters. So then Prabhupada took the cockroach up in his hand and opened the window, and then he told the cockroach, here, I'm giving you the whole world, now you can enjoy it. And he threw the cockroach out of the window and closed it. So then somehow we got one doctor had just built a brand new house which he was going to make into a clinic, and no one had moved in it yet. So he thought that, okay, I'll give it to you for 6 months. It'll be auspicious. Some sadhus will come and stay in my new clinic, my new house. So then we had a place to invite Prabhupada. So in the meantime, Prabhupada had left America and gone to Japan. So we sent him the message that now we had a place for him separate. So then Prabhupada said, okay, I'm coming. And we made a big reception in the airport in Calcutta. We had the newspapers, we had all the media was there. It was a big event. In fact, a whole truckload of Gaudiya Vaishnava devotees came for a chanting kirtan to receive Prabhupada. Then we were asked to go and invite everyone. Before Prabhupada came, we went around and invited all of his godbrothers who would like to come to receive him, because here he was like a conquering Gaudiya Vaishnava missionary who had spread Krishna consciousness in places where no one had ever even ventured to go before, and was coming back successfully. And one godbrother, Puri Maharaj, he said, oh yes, I would like to go. But when he said that, I didn't really know much about the internal workings or the politics or whatever that was going on between the different Gaudiya Mat people. But one Grihastha devotee came up to him and said, no, Maharaj, how can you go? You are an older godbrother to him. You took initiation before he did. You took sannyas before he did. So you cannot go to him. He should come to meet you. I said, it's kind of strange. I mean, what does it matter if you're initiated a few days earlier or later? Someone had done such a wonderful preaching. So in the end, none of Prabhupada's godbrothers actually came to the airport to meet him, but some disciples of his godbrothers came to meet him. So Prabhupada noted that he was not very happy that none of his godbrothers came to meet him. And then one of the godbrothers' disciple invited that your godbrother's waiting for you at his temple. He has a feast for you there. So he wants you to go from the airport to his temple. And then Prabhupada, he became very grave. And then he said, let us go in the car. Of course, before that we had a big reception, a press conference and everything, and there was an arti in the VIP lounge. He didn't have to go through any customs, immigration. He went straight to the VIP lounge, and then when he came out, we had a big, it was a Cadillac actually. Somehow one life member had a Chevrolet or Cadillac, a very big car for India, American car. And so then Prabhupada went in that, and then they invited that you come to the temple of his godbrother. When he went in the car, and then he said, take me to your house. I will not go to that temple. You can go later and bring the prasadam that they've made and bring it to the house. You go straight to our house. We were invited to some Bhagavad Gita conference. It was sponsored by one of the disciples of Gandhiji, Vinoda Bhave, in a place called Wardha in Maharashtra. And he's very famous. Vinoda Bhave was like one of the most famous saints in the Gandhi tradition, and all big political leaders would go to meet him. And he was trying to protect the cows from being slaughtered. That was like one of his last campaigns. But somehow he was having a big conference on the Bhagavad Gita, and he invited Prabhupada to come. And he invited many other sadhus to come. So I was there for that conference. And they were all sitting in a very raised seat, and Vinoda Bhave had many women disciples who would chant whole chapters of the Bhagavad Gita. And then Prabhupada, he had international devotees, men and women. And there were other Mayavadis who had their disciples. So Prabhupada, Vinoda Bhave had his disciples sing the Bhagavad Gita, and he spoke something. Then Prabhupada had us chant Hare Krishna. We were all chanting a big kirtan. Everybody was rocking and clapping their hands, and they were getting into the kirtan. Then Prabhupada delivered a very nice lecture. Then afterwards there was one Mayavadi sannyasi, and it seemed like he was upset that Prabhupada's kirtan and everything was having a big effect on the whole crowd. So then, normally he would just give a Bhagavad Gita class, but now he wanted to do a kirtan also. So then he told the people, you should all chant with me, we'll do a kirtan. And it seemed like he was just speculating some mantra right on the spot. Maybe he chanted before, I don't know. But it was a very unusual mantra, something like Satchit Ananda Vasudeva Satchit Ananda Govindam, some Om Tat Sat. And then, it was just like really strange, and nobody was really getting inspired by the mantra, but he was trying to chant it. In the middle of Prabhupada, he just said to the devotees, chant Hare Krishna again. So then right in the middle of his, Mayavadi kirtan, the devotees just jumped up and with kirtan, kartals and madranga drums, they just started chanting, and everybody was kind of relieved because that was the most strange chant they'd ever heard before, in their life. So then they all started chanting with Prabhupada. I was there also when some devotees, we went with Srila Prabhupada when he was seeing Indira Gandhi, and he had a list of things he was going to discuss with Indira Gandhi. But then Indira Gandhi said that she was very upset because the president of Bangladesh, who was the founding president, Mujibur Rahman, he had just been assassinated in a coup. So she was very upset. But she made time for Prabhupada to see her, but first time she gave was a Thursday afternoon. So Prabhupada, he didn't really consult much with astrologers or anything, but he followed that don't have a really important meeting on a Thursday afternoon. Consider that it was not an auspicious time. That was about the only astrological thing he really observed. So he said, if I have to meet her at that time, then I don't want to meet her because I'd meet her in the morning or in the evening, but not in the afternoon. So they changed the time to a time that he approved of. So then we all went together, and but we got just to the door where Indira Gandhi came and met him, and then he went in alone and talked with her. So later we came back, and so she was very respectful to him. And she asked him, actually, well, how do you know that your followers, they're not CIA agents? And then he had to explain that, I went to the West, I preached, these people have sacrificed everything, they gave up so many bad habits, they're getting up at 4 in the morning and attending Mangal Aartis. And if they were CIA, they'd go live in 5-star hotels and they would have a whole different lifestyle. They wouldn't be vegetarians, give up all these habits. So then she was convinced, and then she said, all right, so I'll give so many of your devotees, I'll give them long-term visa. Because there was a problem then, they weren't giving us visas. So then in India, after that, she passed some order, and we all got, those who needed visas, they all got visas. One very nice thing which happened, one day we were in Mayapur, we were walking through the fields, and then Prabhupada would always have us, he'd ask me to sometime lead the way through the fields, because there are just these little narrow paths between the rice paddies. And so then he said, these are like the little highways in the fields. So then he said he wanted to go to the Ganges, and he went down to the Ganges. And that time it was in the winter, and so the river was very low, and the water had become very clear. Normally the Ganges is like a little saffron color, slightly muddy with a reddish hue. But now the flow had reduced so much that you could see the bottom. It was clear. It was very rare to see the Ganges like that. So then Prabhupada said, let's take a bath. And then the secretary said, well, Prabhupada, we don't have any gamchas or towels or anything. We just came for a walk. Then Prabhupada looked around and said, well, there's no women here. We can just go in our kopins. And then I have a top piece, I can wear this. So then he took off the top piece and put it on. And all the devotees, brahmacharis and sannyasis, just went into the Ganges. And then Prabhupada, he did something I never saw anyone do before. It's like when he was dipping under, he closed all the holes in his head. I won't be able to speak when I do this, so I just did give a demonstration. But he put 2 fingers over the mouth, 2 over the nostrils, 2 over the eyes, and the thumbs in the ears, like this. He took 3 dips, then he came out. And then one devotee got a little excited, wanted to put water on Prabhupada's back or something, but then he kind of looked, and then it was getting too familiar. But it was very, I don't know what to say, it was very ecstatic to just suddenly have that kind of a spontaneous bath with Srila Prabhupada. Well, sometimes he'd be sitting in his room in Calcutta, and then I remember one time he was explaining, one of the life members said, well, can you show us a miracle? And Prabhupada said, well, some yogis, they show a miracle of, they give some rasgulla or sweet or something. Said, I went to America with $40, with 40 rupees rather, and now we have temples all over the world in this short span, which are worth more than 400 million rupees. So isn't that a miracle? And they thought for a minute, and the businessmen were calculating, said, that's a miracle. So we were walking on near the Jalangi River one day, and Prabhupada, one villager, he came with a big basket of vegetables on his head. So then Srila Prabhupada asked, so you're going to sell those in the market? He said, yes. Well, how much will you sell? You sell us the whole basket. And he had just been telling the devotees how I liked fresh vegetables from the garden, and we should offer our vegetables to the deity. And if you buy wholesale, how you can save money. Here a man came with a basket on his head. So then Prabhupada immediately set up a bargaining with him. And he started telling, look, if you go to the market, you'll spend the whole day sitting there with a basket. I'm buying it from you right now. You can go and do something else. You don't have to walk 2 miles to the market and sell your goods. So like this, he bargained him down to maybe 6 rupees for the basket. And then say, okay, you go to the temple, and here's a chit, give him a note, and they'll pay you over there. So the man went off with a basket and went to the temple and sold those vegetables, and then that was what they cooked for the deities and Prabhupada that day. One time, I remember one Maharaj was cooking up hot puris, and we were taking hot puris with date gur, with date molasses. And then Prabhupada was looking through the window and seeing everybody, the sannyasis and brahmacharis around getting hot puris, and then taking, one after another with the date gur. Then he said, this is not very good for sannyasi life. One time, one of the big ministers, he was the number 2 person in the state government. He was the home minister. And he came to see Srila Prabhupada, and his family, his name is Tarunkanti Ghosh. His family is family of Vaishnavas. His grandfather was the one who said that Bhaktivinoda Thakur was the 7th Goswami. He had written a book about Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So now his grandson had become a big politician. He was the editor of a major newspaper also. So he came to see Prabhupada, and when he came, he went right behind Prabhupada's desk, and he went to grab Srila Prabhupada's feet. So at that time, Brahmananda was going to come, and then looked like he was going to go and jump on him. And then Prabhupada, here the home minister is the person who's in charge of all the police, all the everything. He said, no, sorry. And he just came and grabbed Prabhupada's feet and just put his head on his feet. Like Prabhupada, what could he do? There was one very interesting thing happened, that when we moved to the new building in Mayapur, where he was staying in the 3rd floor, but the building was not finished. The toilets were not completed, the piping hadn't been connected. So we had to personally empty the toilet. There'd be a bucket there. And the toilet was there, but there was just no pipe. And he came all of a sudden and we wasn't ready. So we had the service to go, and who could empty out the remnants or whatever, the refuse. But one day, Prabhupada started calling out, Jayapataka, Jayapataka. And I didn't know why he was calling out, so I ran to the bathroom. And in the bathroom, Prabhupada was holding the door semi-shut, and there was a snake, a venomous serpent, was stuck in the border of the door, and it was trying to bite Srila Prabhupada, and it was leaping out and just coming and missing him. And he was holding the door, so by the pressure of the door, he was like, the snake was being slightly crushed, so that he couldn't get loose. So like Prabhupada was like this and holding over here, and the snake was half, this much, it was out of the door, and he was trying to get Prabhupada. And so he was like, he had called for me, and then, I saw the situation. So then somehow I got Prabhupada out of there, and with a stick or something, we hit the snake down, and we got Prabhupada out. And then this is a very unusual circumstance, and all of a sudden. But afterwards, like Prabhupada was, and he never lost. He was just, it was an urgent situation, so he was calling, but it was never that. He was always under the circumstance, cool and calm, and never lost his. Then he was trying to find out where the others live. So if there's one, there must be 2, because they always go in pairs. We could never. The other one disappeared down a hole, and we could never find it. One time, he was very strong with me, and he was like chastising me or giving me some strong instruction. And the next time I came to see him, then he had changed his mood. And he said, I'm sorry that maybe I dealt with you too harshly, or, He said, how did he say it? He said, I'm a very hard person to tolerate, I deal very harshly or something. And I couldn't believe that Prabhupada was saying, such a thing to me. And then I said, no, Srila Prabhupada, I was offensive, and there was no wrong on your part. Actually, Prabhupada was walking down the stairway in Calcutta, and there were many devotees, I think like Tamal Krishna and so many different devotees were there. And Prabhupada was going down the step, and his step slipped a little bit. It looked like he was almost going to fall down the stairway. And one of the senior devotees said, "Watch out, Srila Prabhupada." And then Prabhupada just stopped and looked, and he said that it is your responsibility to watch out. You have to take care of the body of the spiritual master. And the spiritual master will look out for your spiritual well-being. But as far as whether I fall or not, that you have to guard against. We were walking in the morning walk with Srila Prabhupada in North Calcutta. And then Srila Prabhupada just said, "Oh, here's a life member." He was a very wealthy man. For some reason, Prabhupada wanted to just stop in at his house, so he walked in. And the servant came out and he said, "Tell your master that Bhaktivedanta Swami is here." So then after some time the servant came out and said, "Babu puja korta hai," that the master is doing puja. He's doing worship of his deity. He'll be here after some time. So then Prabhupada just commented that Krishna is more pleased when the devotee is served than when he's served. And that if this person was a more advanced devotee, he would appreciate it that here a spiritual master has come and left his deity worship to receive the devotee of Krishna. But because he's thinking that his deity worship is more important than receiving the devotee of Krishna, this shows that he's a neophyte or a Kanishtadikari. There was one time a thief who was a con artist who dressed like a sannyasi, and he started collecting in the name of ISKCON. He gave himself the name of Chutananda. So he was known amongst devotees as a Chutananda number 2. And he was based in Rajasthan. And around Jaipur he was collecting money. Somehow he got receipts. He copied receipts, rubber stamps, everything you needed to collect money. He even made up a big plan for building a temple. And he was going around and getting donations from people saying he's a Chutananda and it's for ISKCON. So some of these people appeared in Bombay and said, "Yeah, we were made a member by a Chutananda. Were you a life member?" With Chutananda in Jaipur. Chutananda at that time was in Hyderabad or South India somewhere. So then they sent a few devotees up to find out who is this Chutananda, and then they located that he was actually a thief. And he was stealing from people in this way, was a con artist. So somehow they got him to go to see Prabhupada, who was in Mayapur. And Prabhupada had called the equivalent of the FBI in India, the CID, the chief of the district police, superintendent of police, and they all came. In the meantime, Prabhupada talked with this person. This is Chutananda number 2. And he, after talking to Prabhupada, he said that you're a great spiritual master, a saint. I feel changed after talking with you. So I want to surrender at your lotus feet. I'm going to surrender my life to you and do whatever you say. I'm giving up all my bad ways. So then Prabhupada called in all the big police officers that came there to take this person away because there had already been cases registered and everything. And he said that I have to give this person asylum because he surrendered to me. As a spiritual master, if someone surrenders to me, I have to give him shelter. And they were, you know how police are, they're like ready to just dive in on him and, take him away. And they were like, "Wow, Guruji, what can we say? But we don't believe this person. He's a thief, So what can I do? If he surrenders, then I have to accept. But he told that person, if you follow, you're safe. But if we find that you want to escape and leave, I'm going to turn you over to the police. So he gave that person some service to do. He had him do some writing for him and kept him engaged. But after about, I don't know, a week or 10 days, some devotee spotted him in the Mangalarti time trying to leave from the front gate with his bag. So then he went and grabbed him and brought him over to Srila Prabhupada. And Srila Prabhupada said, I gave you a chance. You said you were surrendering, but now you're revealing that you are not actually sincere. So then he called the police and said, okay, now I'm giving him over to you. One day, and when we just moved into the Lotus building, the first multi-story temple, guest house, where Prabhupada's quarters were, when we moved from the grass hut to that building, then there was a very big feast. And we invited many villagers and everyone to come, gave a big feast. After the feast was over, all the leaf plates were thrown behind the temple. And then Prabhupada went upstairs to his room. And I was sitting in the room with Srila Prabhupada, and then there was dogs barking in the back. So Prabhupada got up and walked over to the veranda and looked over the veranda. And there he saw that there was this big pile. I mean, so many people had taken prasadam. There was a very big pile of banana leaves, which are the organic way that you eat in India, you know, off a leaf. And there were some young, some children who were obviously very poor. They had, torn clothes, and they had sticks in their hand, and they were beating off the dogs to get the remnants of food that people had left on their plates and thrown in the garbage pile. And when Prabhupada saw that, he saw that, what a scene to see human beings have to fight dogs off to eat, the throwaways, the spittings that people have thrown away. When Prabhupada saw that, literally he started to cry. Tears were coming down. And he just said, just see how hungry they must be. I mean, who would, stoop to that kind of a situation to fight off dogs, to eat, things that other people had thrown away. So he was really moved that these children are so hungry. And he said, we have to organize that nobody within a 10-mile radius of the temple is hungry. Everyone should have food to eat. So that's when he organized this. Initially it started as the ISKCON food relief. Later it became Food for Life. And he wanted that there should be a regular program of distributing prasadam on a weekly basis, 2 days a week. And we started all 7 days in the week we were distributing. 5 days for little children and pregnant and nursing mothers, and 7 days was simply for anybody, without any discrimination, whether they're Hindu, Muslim, Christian, or anyone, men, women, young, old. So that, and Prabhupada was so moved when he saw that people were hungry like that.
Je anilo premadana karuna.
Mayapur Dham, and
Krishna Kirtana Ganana Ganapatau.
But one time at a disappearance festival of Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, Prabhupada was explaining how the disciple tries to carry out the order of his guru and the previous Param Guru, the grandfather guru and the previous acharyas. And then he gave us an example that how Srila Bhakti Vinod Thakur had begged door to door to build the first temple at Mayapur Dham, and how the different acharyas had contributed to development of Mayapur Dham, how Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur had constructed the Joga Pit birthplace temple for Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and developed the Dham. And so Prabhupada said, and so to please my spiritual master and the previous acharyas, so I'm trying to do something also here in Mayapur Dham. And then he said, and I'm very grateful to everyone who is helping me. And then he couldn't speak any further. Just like he choked up and he started crying. And there was a long silence. We didn't know what to do. And Prabhupada said, the secret of success is to please, to satisfy the desires of the previous acharyas. When we finally got to 72, Prabhupada invited everyone to come for the Ananta Session inauguration. I have some beautiful pictures. I'm trying to find a time to show them to everyone. But when Prabhupada went and he dug this 12-foot hole and we put Ananta Sesha there and he invited all of the godbrothers to the Gaudiya Math, you know what he invited? He said, for the pleasure of Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Prabhupada, let us all cooperate together, form a governing body, unite. This is what will please him. Let us unite and preach together. And everyone was amazed. Here Prabhupada already created 40 temples. He's inviting everyone, let's work together. And you think, this is really Krishna conscious. I mean, this Prabhupada has shown the way. His desire, total cooperation to please the Guru. But then nobody accepted. In my young years, I could never really understand. Later, I started to realize that maybe there were different attachments people had. But Prabhupada's vision was always so universal. And he said, well, okay, if they don't want to work, but we will do it. And he established a governing body, and he established Guru Parampara and everything within ISKCON. And he said, I'm doing everything simply as an offering to please my spiritual master. So there may always be detractors, but I am simply trying to do this to please the previous acharyas. So in ISKCON, we are simply dedicating ourselves to serve Srila Prabhupada's vision. There are many people who may not be able to understand that, but we see that by doing that, actually, we get all the success. We owe everything to Srila Prabhupada.
Je anilo prema dana karuna prachu.
For us, Bombay was a very important place. The Prabhupada said that Mayapur was Vrindavan was his home, Bombay was his office, and Mayapur was his place of worship. So for us in Mayapur, Bombay was a very, very important place. It was one of the important places that the Prabhupada was related with. He mentioned that because Bombay was the most modernized financial powerhouse in India, that it was also becoming the most westernized. This was the home of the Bollywood, cinema, so many different factors. So he wanted to establish a temple which was going to have a mission. This temple is not an ordinary temple. This temple has a mission to stop the westernization or to preserve the Krishna consciousness of India, especially here in Bombay, and from Bombay the idea would help to preserve it all over India. Sometime Prabhupada would confide in us how his Guru Maharaj had ordered him to preach in the West, to bring Krishna consciousness around the world, to preach in English language. And he said that my Guru didn't specifically order me to preach in India. So whenever I preached in the West, I was very successful. So his idea was to build temple in Vrindavan, in Mayapur, for his Western devotees to come and visit the holy places. But then he said, how could he stand by and see India going to hell? Seeing how Indians were giving up their culture, following the West, and becoming degraded in various ways and losing Krishna consciousness. So he said it was his personal mission that he was preaching in India. So those...
He also said that Lord Washington in Los Angeles spoke to him, sent him to India, although it wasn't his plan. It wasn't his plan, it was his Guru Maharaj's plan, but it was...
He said, Lord Dwarka, I don't know if you heard what Brahmananda Prabhu said. He said something I didn't even know about. It's that Lord Dwarkadish in Los Angeles, the deity personally spoke to Prabhupada and ordered him, although it wasn't his Guru Maharaj's plan, but Krishna himself spoke, that you have to go back to India and you have to organize the preaching there. Haribol! But how much Prabhupada was very personally related with these deities. We know that he established the Mayapur Vrindavan Trust. In that trust he said that 30% is for, in case ISKCON ever, at that time in India, we weren't so well established. But whatever it may be, he wanted that there be some kind of a perpetual seva security for the deities, and especially he mentioned 30% for Radharas Bihari, 30% for Vrindavan, Krishna Balaram, Radhisham deities, and 30% for Mayapur, Radhamadhava, Panchatattva deities, and 10% for Hyderabad. So all these things showing that how these deities here in Mumbai, Prabhupada was so much related with them very intimately. I was there present when Srila Maharaj asked for permission to get sannyas of Prabhupada. I was sitting in the room and Prabhupada gave him permission. I think finally gave him in Vrindavan though. That was interesting. I mean, Prabhupada said, are you 100% sure you can, be a sannyasi? And then Srila Maharaj, that he was very humble. And he said, well, no, I'm not 100% sure that I can. Are you 75% sure? He said, 75% sure. I'm not 75% sure either. I said, are you 50% sure? He said, I'm 50% sure. And then he said, okay, well then I'll give you a sannyas. I think Prabhupada, of course, he knew his heart, but he wanted to get a...
Jai Anilo Premadana Karuna Prachu.
Hare Krishna devotees, I have one more video from His Holiness Jayapataka Maharaj. It's 5 minutes video. With that, we will end today's session.
And then it was a very complex time. I mean, because I was there with Achyutananda, and we just heard how there had been 9 initiations of sannyas in Los Angeles. And for young brahmacharis, this was like, wow, to become a sannyasi, that was like something really super, really wonderful. I guess you'd say, awesome. And so that was what was really, on my mind, about this taking sannyas and what did it all mean. And then Srila Prabhupada called in Achyutananda in the evening when we were just taking rest. And I didn't have a clue what sannyas was. And I thought, well, maybe Prabhupada's going to give him sannyas. But instead, Prabhupada was chastising, and I could hear him, really raising his voice. And I said, it doesn't sound like he's getting sannyas. And the next thing I knew, I was being called on the carpet. And then Prabhupada was asking me questions. But I didn't understand. He was asking me things which I didn't really know anything about. And then he looked at Devananda, or someone was the secretary, I think, at that time. And he kind of looked and he said, no, he doesn't know anything. He's clean. And then Prabhupada called us kind of all in the room and explained that, because right before this there had been this really serious thing that happened in America where in New Vrindavan the 4 sannyasis had declared that Prabhupada was an avatar and that he should, and Prabhupada had to ban them actually, or exile them from ISKCON because of this situation that was going on. It was very dangerous. And he was very much afraid of that situation. So he explained to us how this kind of poison of Mayavad had crept into early ISKCON at that time. He said that somebody had written a letter to Achyutananda, one of his, it was Achyutananda wrote to Brahmananda, a letter that Achyutananda had heard from one of Prabhupada's godbrothers, that Prabhupada wasn't actually doing the preaching, that he was just acting as a kind of an extension of Bhaktisiddhanta, like kind of a media that, but it wasn't actually him that was doing that. It was actually Bhaktisiddhanta who was initiating everybody. Bhaktisiddhanta was doing it. So Prabhupada, Thakur was doing everything, and Prabhupada was kind of just acting like, nowadays what they call like a riktik, just like acting like some kind of just not doing anything on his own responsibility. It was actually, everybody is a disciple of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, not a disciple of Prabhupada. So somehow Achyutananda wrote some kind of a letter like that to Brahmananda, what he had heard. And then Brahmananda and the other sannyasis, Prabhupada, so they must have started to speculate that, well, if we're initiated by Prabhupada, we're not Prabhupada's disciple, we're actually Bhaktisiddhanta's disciple. Then, well, we could also be Bhaktivinoda Thakur's disciple because he's just representing Bhaktivinoda, and if you could be Bhaktivinoda, you could actually be the 6 Goswamis, and if you could be the 6 Goswamis, you could actually be Lord Chaitanya's disciple. And then if you could be Lord Chaitanya's Krishna, then we're Krishna's disciple. And then somehow, in this whole logic, then they came to the conclusion that Prabhupada was actually Krishna, therefore. Which was kind of like, I lost the logic there, but that's how it happens. That actually Achyutananda is innocent. He just kind of transmitted this message. And so the Prabhupada was kind of warning us to be very careful. Any little deviation from the philosophy, any little new kind of introduction, you can create a very huge misconception in the future. I remember one time he got a letter about a devotee, I think it was in Australia, who had a problem and was asked to leave the temple, and then Prabhupada was crying. he said that this devotee done so much service that should go and fall at his feet, beg him to come back, beg him to take up Krishna consciousness again. Why are you throwing him away? At least beg him 3 times, falling at his feet, begging him. After 3 times if you beg him and it still doesn't come, well then what can you do? So Prabhupada was so much concerned about every devotee, that everyone be treated very nice, and people be given every opportunity to try to remain in Krishna consciousness. Of course, at the same time, if they were preaching Mayavad or something, then he had to take a very strong action to protect the others.
Je anilo premadana koruna prachu.
Hare Krishna devotees, and our pranam. Thank you very much for your time. And it's very nice to hear from Maharaj about his personal experience and realization with Srila Prabhupada. Thank you. We have 2-3 minutes of time. If devotees want to share their reflections, you may please unmute your mic and share the reflections.
Hare Krishna,
Hare
Prabhuji.
Krishna.
Thanks for that wonderful audio, Prabhu. It's simply nectarian to hear from Guru Maharaj, Prabhu. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mataji. Hare Krishna, Prasanatma Balaram Prabhu, please.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Thank you. See, as usual, of course, it is very wonderful. I just have one request actually now. In the lecture, I lost my connection when Guru Maharaj was talking about the incident where Srila Prabhupada invites all his god brothers, and one of them is responding saying that he will come, but then his disciple stops him, or at least he cautions him saying, how can you go? After that, what was the reply? I couldn't hear. If one of you can fill me in, that would be wonderful.
So when Prabhupada heard this, I think Puri Maharaj finally didn't go. It was Puri Maharaj who wanted to go, but his disciple told him that Srila Prabhupada actually took initiation after you. You are senior to him,
Correct.
and he should come and meet you. So he says that, and Puri Maharaj doesn't go. And then when Prabhupada was received, he was told by one of the disciples that your god brothers are actually waiting in the temple. So you please come to the temple. So Prabhupada actually says to another devotee that I will come to your home, and if they want to come, they can come and meet me there, and I will take prasadam. Like that, Prabhupada says.
Okay, so
He
that
was very grave. He was very grave. He was not appreciating. Yeah.
So that Maharaj doesn't go then because he was warned. Okay, okay. Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you, because I couldn't listen to that. I lost the connection. So thank you.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Any other reflections from any other devotees before we end the class?
Hare Krishna, Prabhu, Dandavat Pranams. Thanks for the wonderful class, Prabhu. If you want to hear to these lectures, you have to go to YouTube and see the recordings, Prabhu.
Yes, Mataji, we have also recorded this in our ISKCON South Bangalore YouTube channel. You can actually directly hear from them as well. Come as a sequence. There are 5 videos. I played 4. So, yeah.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Okay. There are no reflections or comments. We can end the session with Vaishnava Pranam. Vancha kalpata rubhyasya kripa sindho bhyayevacha patitanam pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Jagat Guru Srila Prabhupada ki jai. His Holiness Jayapataka Swami Maharaj ki jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnavanda ki jai. Thank you, devotees. I will end the Zoom session.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Dandavat Pranam.